In a world where marble floors cost more than most people earn in a lifetime, a 7-year-old girl named Emma Richardson learned that monsters don't always hide under beds. Sometimes they sleep in the master bedroom. October 23rd started like any other Friday in the Richardson mansion. Michael Richardson, tech billionaire, kissed his daughter goodbye at the airport. He had no idea it would be the last normal moment of her life. His fiancée, a woman named Victoria Chen, waved from the doorway, her smile perfect, her eyes empty. And in the kitchen, a housekeeper named Marie Santos felt her stomach turn because she'd heard something the night before, something that made her blood run cold. Victoria speaking on the phone in French, thinking no one understood. But Marie's mother was from Haiti. Marie understood every word. 3 days, Victoria had said. That's all I need. By the time he comes back, it will look like an accident. These things happen with children. They wander, they fall, they disappear. Marie told herself she misheard, that her mind was playing tricks, that no one could be that evil. She was wrong, because 12 hours after Michael's plane took off, Emma would be fighting for her life in a place where screams don't carry, and Marie would have to make a choice that would either save a little girl or destroy everything she'd worked for in this country. What happens when you see evil happening right in front of you, when speaking up could cost you everything you have? When silence might mean living with a child's death on your conscience forever? To understand what happened that October night, you need to know who Michael Richardson really was. He wasn't born into wealth. He built it from nothing, coding in a garage at 19, sleeping on floors, eating ramen for months. By 35, his software company was worth $3 billion. But money doesn't protect you from heartbreak. When his wife Sarah died giving birth to Emma, something in Michael broke. For 2 years, he barely functioned. He'd sit in Emma's nursery at 3 in the morning, holding this tiny baby, crying because she'd never know her mother. Emma became everything to him. She had Sarah's eyes, Sarah's laugh, Sarah's way of tilting her head when she asked questions. By the time Emma turned 5, she was asking things like, why do people smile when they're sad? And Michael realized his daughter was too observant for her own good. She noticed everything, the way people's voices changed when they lied, the difference between real kindness and fake politeness. She was brilliant, sensitive, and deeply attached to her mother's memory. Michael knew he needed to move forward, but he was terrified. Then he met Victoria Chen at an art gallery fundraiser. She was 29, sophisticated, and seemed genuinely interested in his stories about Emma. She laughed at the right moments, touched his hand gently when he mentioned Sarah, and never rushed him. For the first time in years, Michael felt something other than grief. What he didn't see was how Victoria's smile disappeared the moment he looked away, how her eyes went cold when Emma ran up to hug him during their 3rd date, how she calculated every word, every gesture, every moment of manufactured warmth. Marie Santos had worked for the Richardsons since Emma was born. She'd been there the night Sarah died, holding Michael as he sobbed, promising him they'd get through it together. She'd raised Emma alongside him, teaching her Spanish, baking cookies, braiding her hair. Marie wasn't just staff, she was family. And from the first time Victoria walked through that door, Marie knew something was wrong. It wasn't anything obvious. It wasn't anything obvious. Victoria was always polite to her, always smiling. But Marie had spent 12 years reading people in that house, and Victoria's politeness felt rehearsed. When Michael announced the engagement 6 months later, Emma cried herself to sleep that night. The warning signs were there from the beginning, but people see what they want to see. Research shows that stepchildren face significantly elevated risk of maltreatment, particularly in households where one biological parent lives with a step-parent. Marie had seen it before in other wealthy families she'd worked for, the way some new partners looked at existing children, not as people to love, but as obstacles to overcome. Victoria was textbook. She never raised her voice at Emma when Michael was around, never showed irritation, but the moment he left the room, her entire demeanor shifted. Marie watched it happen dozens of times. Victoria would be playing with Emma, laughing, asking about her drawings. Then Michael's phone would ring and he'd step out to take a call, Within seconds, Victoria would pull her hand away from Emma's, wipe it on her dress like she'd touched something dirty, and walk to the other side of the room. Emma noticed too. 7-year-olds are more perceptive than adults give them credit for. She started having nightmares, started asking Marie questions like, "Why does Victoria smile at me but her eyes look angry?" Marie didn't know how to answer that. How do you tell a child that the woman her father loves might not actually love her back? The engagement party was when Marie's concerns turned to genuine fear. It was a beautiful October evening, 200 guests on the mansion's back lawn, champagne flowing, string quartet playing. Emma was supposed to be the flower girl at the wedding. Victoria had even picked out her dress, made a big show of including her in the planning. But at the party, when Emma accidentally bumped into Victoria while running, spilling red wine on her white designer gown, Marie saw something that made her stomach drop. For just a flash, maybe 2 seconds, Victoria's face contorted with pure rage. Not annoyance, not frustration, hatred, raw, undiluted hatred toward a 7-year-old child. Then the mask slipped back on. Victoria laughed it off, told everyone it was fine. Accidents happen. But Marie had seen the truth. And that night after the party, Marie heard Victoria on the phone speaking French. Marie's mother had taught her enough to understand. The words accident, inheritance, and 3 days. That's when Marie knew. This wasn't about love gone wrong or step-family struggles. This was about money, and a woman who saw a child as nothing more than an obstacle to a fortune. October 23rd, the night Michael left for Singapore. Victoria moved through the house like she owned it already, checking her watch every few minutes. Marie noticed she'd changed clothes 3 times that evening, finally settling on something casual but expensive. At 7:30, Emma came down for dinner. She looked pale, told Marie her stomach hurt. Marie made her soup, watched her eat a few spoonfuls. Victoria appeared in the doorway, smiling that perfect smile. She had a glass of warm milk in her hand, told Emma it would help her sleep, that she'd feel better in the morning. Emma drank it without question because children trust the adults in their lives, even when they shouldn't. What Emma didn't know was that prescription sleep aids like Ambien are explicitly not to be used in children, and that Victoria had crushed several pills into that milk. "30 minutes later, Emma was stumbling, confused, saying the room was spinning. Victoria told Marie to go to bed early, that she'd handle it, that Emma just needed rest. Marie hesitated at her door, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. But Victoria had made her position clear days ago. One phone call and Marie would lose everything, her job, her home, possibly her freedom. So Marie went to her room, but she didn't close her eyes. At 11, she heard footsteps in the hallway, heavy, labored. She cracked her door and saw Victoria dragging something wrapped in a blanket toward the basement stairs. Marie's heart stopped because she knew exactly what that blanket contained. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking so badly she could barely hold it, and started recording. She followed at a distance, bare feet silent on cold marble, watching Victoria descend into the basement. The mansion had levels that went deeper than they should, remnants from another era when people built hiding places. Victoria knew about them because she'd asked Michael about every corner of this house, claiming she wanted to understand its history. Marie watched through the darkness as Victoria opened a heavy steel door, the kind designed to keep things locked away permanently. She dragged Emma inside and dropped her on concrete. The little girl didn't move. Victoria checked her pulse, looked at her watch, and spoke to herself in a voice Marie had never heard before. Cold, clinical, completely devoid of humanity. She said the dosage should keep her unconscious for 6 hours, maybe 8. By then, dehydration and fear would do the rest. Then Victoria left, locking that door behind her, and drove away to establish her alibi at a charity event across town. Marie stood in the darkness outside that steel door for what felt like hours but was only minutes. Her mind raced through impossible calculations. Call the police and risk Victoria's accusations destroying her before help arrived. Stay silent and live with a child's death forever. Try to break through and fail, alerting Victoria that someone knew. The door was solid, designed decades ago when people built things to last centuries. She tried the handle anyway, pulling with everything she had. Nothing. She ran back upstairs, searched frantically through closets and storage rooms for anything that might help. A toolbox in the garage gave her a hammer, a screwdriver, but nothing strong enough for industrial steel. Then she remembered the ventilation system. Old mansions like this had shafts running through walls to regulate temperature in wine cellars. She found it in the ceiling near the locked room, a grate covered in years of dust. Her hands shook as she unscrewed it, metal grinding against metal in the silence. The opening was maybe 10 inches wide, too small for her but large enough to lower her phone. She turned on the camera, hit record, and lowered it down into darkness. The screen showed concrete walls, and there, lying motionless on the floor, was Emma. Marie's throat closed. She couldn't tell if the child was breathing. She wanted to scream but forced herself to stay quiet, to think. She pulled the phone back up and called the one person who could act faster than any police department. Michael answered on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep. It was 3 in the morning in Singapore. Marie's words tumbled out in a rush, half English, half Spanish, barely coherent. She told him everything. The conversation she'd overheard. Victoria dragging Emma to the basement. The locked door. The video she'd recorded. Michael's silence lasted 3 seconds. Then his voice came back, completely changed, cold, focused, deadly calm. He told her to send the video immediately, not to call the police yet, not to confront Victoria, to stay near that door and keep Emma alive however she could. He was getting on a plane. 14 hours and he'd be there. Therese sent the video and went back to that ventilation shaft. She lowered her phone again, this time with the speaker on. "Emma," she called down. "Emma, baby, can you hear me?" Nothing. She called again, louder, desperate. "Please wake up. Your daddy's coming. I'm here. You're not alone." And then, impossibly, Emma's finger moved. Through that small opening in the ventilation shaft, Marie watched Emma's eyes flutter open. The drugs were still heavy in her system, pulling her back toward unconsciousness, but Marie's voice was a lifeline. She started singing an old Spanish lullaby her own mother had sung to her, the same one she'd sung to Emma as a baby. Emma's lips moved, trying to form words. Marie could barely hear her through the shaft, but she caught fragments. Cold. Scared. Want daddy. Marie kept talking, kept singing, kept Emma tethered to consciousness. She told stories about when Emma was little, about the time they baked cookies and Emma got flour in her hair, about the day Emma took her first steps, anything to keep that little girl awake. The basement was cold, maybe 50 degrees, and Emma was lying on concrete, in nothing but her pajamas. Hypothermia combined with drug effects can be deadly, especially in children whose bodies lose heat faster than adults the sun. Marie could see Emma shivering through the phone screen. Every few minutes, Emma would start to drift off, and Marie would call her name sharply, almost yelling, pulling her back. Hours passed like this. 3, 4, 5. Marie's voice went hoarse. Her phone battery dropped to 15%, then 10. She had a charger but was terrified to leave even for the minute it would take to get it. At 4 in the morning, Emma started crying. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears running down her face. She asked why Victoria hated her, asked if her daddy was really coming back, asked if she was going to die down there. Marie told her no, absolutely not. She was not going to die. That help was coming, that Marie would never let anything happen to her. She meant every word, even though she had no idea how she'd keep that promise. Dawn started breaking outside. Light filtered weakly through basement windows, and Marie heard a car in the driveway. Victoria was home. Victoria walked through the front door at 6:47 in the morning, humming softly, carrying her designer purse like she'd just returned from a pleasant evening out. She set her keys on the marble counter, checked her reflection in the hallway mirror, adjusting her hair. That's when she noticed Marie standing in the foyer, covered in dust and dried blood on her bandaged hands. Victoria's perfect smile appeared instantly, but her eyes went sharp, calculating. She asked what happened, voice dripping with false concern. Marie's response was simple and direct. "Open the door." Victoria laughed, that light, carefree sound she'd perfected. She claimed not to know what Marie was talking about, suggested Marie looked exhausted, maybe had been drinking, should go rest. Marie pulled out her phone and pressed play. The video showed everything. Victoria dragging Emma's limp body, the locked basement door, her cold voice discussing dosages and timelines. For just a moment, Victoria's mask cracked. Her face went completely blank, emotionless, and Marie saw the truth underneath. This wasn't a woman capable of love or remorse. This was something else entirely. Victoria's voice went flat when she spoke again, all pretense gone. "You filmed me." Not a question, a statement of fact, delivered with ice in every syllable. Marie told her she'd sent the video to Michael and to her nephew, who was a lawyer, with instructions to send it to every news station if she didn't check in hourly. It was a lie, but Victoria didn't know that. For 5 long seconds, neither woman moved. Victoria was running calculations, weighing her options, deciding her next move. She smiled that beautiful, practiced smile and agreed. "Fine," she said. "You want to see Emma? Let's go see Emma." They walked to the basement together, every step feeling like a descent into something far darker than just a physical space. Victoria pulled a key from her bra, unlocked that heavy steel door. Emma was conscious now, squinting in the sudden light, shaking from cold and fear and drugs still in her system. She whispered, "Daddy," her voice small and broken. Marie rushed past Victoria, scooped Emma into her arms, felt the child's racing heartbeat against her chest. But Victoria wasn't finished. She pulled out her own phone, completely calm, and started building her counter-narrative. She told Marie that everyone would believe she had drugged Emma, that Victoria had been suspicious for weeks, that she'd come home early because she was worried. Marie was the one with access. Marie was the one alone with the child all night. Victoria picked up the sledgehammer Marie had left near the door, weighing it in her hands. She told Marie how the story would go. A struggle, an immigrant housekeeper attacking an innocent child, a brave fiancé trying to intervene. Tragic but heroic. She'd be devastated at the trial, but she'd get through it. She advanced with the weapon raised. Marie had 1 second to decide. She curled herself around Emma, turning her back to Victoria, shielding the child with her own body. She chose love over survival. The sledgehammer swung down. But the sound wasn't metal hitting flesh. It was metal hitting metal. Marie looked up. Michael stood in the doorway, having knocked the weapon from Victoria's hands. He'd chartered a private jet the moment Marie called, broken every speed limit getting home. Behind him stood 2 police officers with weapons drawn. Victoria's face cycled through shock, fear, then calculation. She dropped to her knees instantly, tears appearing from nowhere, performance perfect. She claimed Marie had been hurting Emma, that she'd just discovered it, that Marie had attacked her. The officers looked confused, seeing 2 crying women and a traumatized child. Michael held up his phone. He had the video Marie sent. Everything was recorded. Victoria's mask cracked further. She tried claiming it was fabricated, that Marie had been unstable for months. Then Emma spoke, her small voice muffled against Marie's shoulder. She said Victoria told her nobody would miss her, that Daddy would be happier without her, that she'd make it look like Emma ran away. The room went silent. Emma looked at her father with huge, tearful eyes and said Victoria told her he loved her more now. Michael fell to his knees, reaching for his daughter, understanding how close he'd come to losing everything that mattered. The police arrested Victoria Chen that morning. She fought them, screamed about lawyers and connections, threatened lawsuits against everyone in the room. But as they led her out in handcuffs, she looked back at Michael one final time. The mask she'd worn for months was completely gone now. She smiled, cold and calculated, and said something that made everyone's blood freeze. She told Michael she'd actually loved him for about 3 weeks, but then she'd done the math. Emma would inherit half his estate. She couldn't have that. The child was always going to have an accident, Victoria explained calmly. She was just waiting for the right time. If Marie hadn't interfered, Michael would have come home to a tragedy, and Victoria would have been there to comfort him through his grief. Eventually, she would have had everything. Her laugh echoed up the stairs as they took her away. When police searched Victoria's apartment, they found evidence that made the prosecutor's case airtight. Her laptop contained search history that painted a chilling picture, similar to other cases where stepmothers meticulously planned harm against stepchildren. Investigators found detailed planning. She'd searched how long a child could survive without water, how to create an alibi, and dosage information for sleep medication. They found life insurance policies she'd taken out, forged documents naming her as Emma's legal guardian if something happened to Michael, and a prenuptial agreement she'd drafted heavily in her favor. But the most disturbing evidence was a journal. Detailed, methodical, clinical. It listed Emma's allergies, her schedule, her fears. October 5th, she wrote that Emma mentioned being afraid of the dark. Perfect, Victoria had noted. October 12th, Michael mentioned the old basement rooms that he never visited anymore because they held too many memories of his late wife. October 20th, Victoria had secured a prescription for Ambien, telling a doctor she had insomnia. She'd noted that she only needed a small amount to incapacitate a child Emma's size for 6 to 8 hours. The final entry was dated October 23rd. By the 24th, Emma would be gone. Tragic accident. Lost child. Victoria would play the grieving, almost stepmother. Give it 6 months, then she and Michael could rebuild without the dead wife's shadow and without the child. Just them and his fortune. Victoria Chen was convicted of attempted murder, child endangerment, and fraud. She's serving 25 years to life. At trial, she showed no remorse. Her lawyers tried claiming mental illness, but the jury took less than an hour to convict her. Emma testified through video, brave and clear, telling them about the cold room, about being afraid, about singing with Marie through the vent. When the verdict was read, Michael held his daughter and cried. They went to therapy together, both of them. Michael had to face that his loneliness had blinded him to every warning sign. Emma had nightmares for months, couldn't sleep without lights on, flinched when people stood too close. But children heal when they know they're loved. Michael wanted to give Marie $1 million as a reward. She refused. She told him she didn't save Emma for money. "You don't save family for a reward," she said. "You do it because it's family." What Marie did accept was something more meaningful. Michael legally made her Emma's grandmother, changed his will, gave her partial ownership of the house, made her family in every sense that mattered. Now Marie lives in that mansion, not as help, but as family. Some evenings, Michael watches them together, the woman who saved his daughter and the daughter who survived, and he understands what he almost lost. Not just Emma, but the knowledge of what real love actually looks like. Marie did one interview after the trial. The host asked what she'd say to people who see something wrong, but are afraid to act. Marie looked directly into the camera and said she was terrified every second, thought she'd lose everything. But when she heard that little girl crying, she knew she had two choices: protect herself or protect Emma. Some things are worse than losing a job. Some things are worse than being afraid. Love makes you brave when nothing else can. If you see something, say something. Not tomorrow. Not when it's convenient. Now. Because somewhere right now, there's another Emma. Another Marie. Another moment where someone has to choose between silence and courage. The question is simple. What will you choose? If this story moved you, share it. Someone in your life might need to hear it. Someone might need the courage to act. And if you want more stories that matter, stories that reveal the truth about human nature, both its darkness and its light, hit that subscribe button. Because these aren't just stories, they're reminders of who we are and who we can choose to be. I'll see you in the next one.